Stand by for mode 1, Charlie 17. Mark, mode 1, Charlie.
And the flight dynamics officer says we look good on all sources, right on the trajectory. Crew will experience maximum G-forces of about 4 Gs at shutdown. Coming up on first stage shutdown. I think we saw them all from here.
Roger, Jack. The thrust is going, all 5 up there. Running good. Roger, 17, you're go.
All right, greetings and welcome. My name is Steve Muhammad, and you are watching Knowledge Cypher. And today we are going to talk about the mental stresses that are on essential workers, and we're going to define those essential workers and how they can get help when these mental stresses come upon them. So I'll introduce some of the panel, and then we'll get right into it. We also have a very special guest who is joining us, and we'll allow her to introduce herself. But first, I want to start off by introducing Dr. Dwayne McClure and bring him on. Greetings, Dr. McClure.
Good evening. Good to be here.
All right. And I want to bring on Sister Nicole, who is a Dianetics auditor. All right. Assalamu alaikum, Sister Nicole.
Walaikum salam, sir.
And then we're going to go ahead and join, we're going to be joined by Sister and Dr. Zakia Newland. Greetings, Dr. Newland.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Oh, well.
And so we want to give you the floor, Dr. Newland, to introduce yourself, and we'll get right on into examining this very timely subject of mental stress that's upon these essential workers and how and where they can go to get some aid in overcoming these mental illnesses or the mental stress of being an essential worker. So please go right ahead.
Great, thank you. Well, I'm a social worker by background. I'm currently the chairperson of the social work department at Malloy College, which is in Long Island, and I'm the president of the Nassau-Suffolk Association of Black Social Workers. And it's in that capacity that I first learned of the Black Family Summit. And the Black Family Summit is a collaborative of over 25 organizations that span different types of Black professional membership-based organizations like the National Association of Black Social Workers, the Association of Black Psychologists, the Black Psychiatrists of America, you name it, nurses, doctors. There's so many different organizations affiliated with this summit. And the Black Family Summit put in a proposal and received a grant to operate a culturally responsive helpline known as the Community Cares Listening Line, and I serve as their project coordinator. So it's great to be here to have this discussion. The listening line was developed with the essential workers in mind, recognizing the stresses that they encountered during the pandemic and really wanting to connect with them, affirm them, give them support. So we provide emotional support as well as resource information to our callers, and we're currently operating in the New York and New Jersey area. So I'm so thankful to be here for this discussion. It's timely and it's relevant.
Absolutely. And you were asked to join this conversation by Dr. Swift. And so we're going to bring Dr. Swift on, and we're going to all wish Dr. Swift a very happy birthday.
Great.
That's great.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. My apologies for being late. Please do forgive me and thank you.
Oh, no. We can excuse that, Dr. Swift, since it was your birth date, and that's no problem.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So, Dr. Newland, thank you. Hey, Dwayne, Dr. Dwayne.
Hi. Good to see you and happy birthday.
Thank
I
you so
know.
much.
Happy birthday.
Hey.
So let me play this clip from this clip is let me see, where is this clip at here? Baba Leonard Dustin, and he's going to give a little bit of context and history on how this helpline got started.
I always like to pay homage to those who really sort of paved the way for not only this experience for me, but for the Institute itself. And first, I'd like to say that at the invitation of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan back in 2004, he invited me to come out to Chicago to have a conversation with him. At the very outset, I was not quite sure what the conversation was going to be about. When I got there, he, being his gracious self, said, "Brother Dunstan, I'm really looking at how can we celebrate the black family as we move towards the 2005 Million More Movement, which was then, I think, about the 10th year of the anniversary of the Million Man March." And or maybe it was 20 years. My memory now is slipping me. Whatever the difference between 1995 and 2005 was a celebration. So the Million More Movement was going to be held in October the 15th, 16th in Washington, D.C. So we had a very involved conversation that really sort of reflected on how we first met, which went back to 1972 when as chair of the National Association of Black Social Workers Security Committee, I was responsible for coordinating security for his appearance at our National Association of Black Social Workers Conference in New York City. And from that, we developed a very good relationship over the years. Fast forward the tape, when the process for planning of the Million Man March occurred, he invited me to become a part of the planning committee. So I was honored to do that, and subsequently to be one of the featured speakers at the Million Man March. So he thought, because of my professional background, that being that of a social worker, that I might add some, have some ideas as to how we could celebrate the black family, uplift it, and also simultaneously figure out ways in which we could be more supportive of the black family. So I was unclear after I left his home as to exactly how this might unfold. Fast forward the tape, he invited me to join his tour, his southern tour, meaning from D.C. down to Atlanta, Georgia. I was honored to accompany him throughout that tour. I think it was around August 29th or 30th when Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans. As a matter of fact, we were in Columbia, South Carolina. And it then dawned on me that, well, these families are going to be displaced across the country. And as a result of that, post-traumatic stress is going to begin to kick in. So at dinner that evening, I mentioned to the minister that I think I have an idea of how we can make your notion of strengthening and supporting black families a reality. And we can use this by pulling together professional black organizations during the Million More Movement celebration and figuring out ways in which they can pool their collective resources to support families that are going to be displaced across the country. Well, what he asked me then to do was to figure out ways to invite them to a special session. I have a friend and a colleague who was on the faculty at Howard University School of Social Work, Dr. Patricia Bent Goodley, and she was able to provide, through her faculty position, space at the Howard University School of Medicine's auditorium for us to hold this forum. So on October the 15th, 2005, at Howard University School of Medicine, the minister and I convened 35 national black organizations to figure out a way in which we could support families that were being displaced across the country.
All right, powerful. So let's go ahead and start the conversation. And Dr. Zakia, can you tell us a little bit more about the organization and how you all actually go about helping essential workers?
Certainly. So it was so good to hear Barbara Leonard Dunstan give the history and the context for the Black Family Summit. So in about May, we began pulling together the framework as well as the operational aspects of the Community Cares Listening Line. We call it the Listening Line for short. So I'll just say that. And basically, we knew that we had to build the infrastructure that was going to be culturally responsive. We were very clear in the fact that our population were Black persons who worked as essential workers as well as first responders. And that level of clarity really comes from the recognition of disparities and the disproportionate number of Black people who are being impacted by the pandemic, but who also work in some of the positions as grocery store clerks and dietary staff in hospitals and janitorial staff and other essential functions that we're serving. MTA, I'm from New York City. I live in Long Island now. So transit workers. And so we recognized that it was really critical to, again, like I said, validate them, give them some support, try to get a sense of how to best connect with them for the purposes of offering the services of the listening line. We also recognized how important it was to frame it from a sense of community. What does it mean that community cares? How do we begin to look at some of the African philosophical values and principles to frame how we do our work? And we also included in that looking at the principles of Ubuntu, but also looking at collective work and responsibility, and really thinking about how can we listen with empathy and provide hope. And by kind of thinking about that idea of hope, just being able to help people get a lift in times or collectively unburden with us through the listening line was part of our desire. So we built out the project. We trained some amazing volunteers who came together. Dr. Monique Swift was phenomenal in getting the word out and recruiting her colleagues and others to be part of that initial group. So shout out to you, Dr. Swift, for that. You know, I forever appreciate those efforts. It was awesome. And so we held our first training in June, and the line went live in July. And, you know, we knew it was a startup, so we were trying to make sure we were doing a lot of outreach. We looked at different strategies. We were able to bring on some resources for advertising. Just recently got a whole bunch of palm cards that we want to get in the hands of the persons who need to hear the services. Have had some really good community collaborations with people to get the word out. And now we're hearing people are calling, looking for resources for their own health and well-being, but also we're getting calls where people are looking for resources for family members. So it's amazing to see how when people just hear Community Cares Listening Line, I think they think, well, if the community cares, I'm going to let them listen. And they call us with a whole bunch of information and they share, which is a really good thing for us to see.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you. And if you, any of you want to jump right on in.
Well, I was wondering, I don't know if you said it already, but if you could kind of share, Dr. Zakia, on the types of calls, the range of calls, so that our listeners can kind of hear what some of the, you know, they may connect with some of the callers that have called in, and then also the range of what we are prepared to field and handle.
Absolutely. So the very first call came from New Jersey, and it was a woman who heard about our line through her church. And so she was a grandmother looking for services for a young adult grandson who was autistic. And she shared a little bit with our volunteer about some of the issues that the family was having, some of the barriers that they were encountering looking for services. And our volunteer was able to give them some general guidance about how to seek out different providers and centers that would provide a range of services, and then connect them with some local resources. So that was our very first call. And so clearly that's not the essential worker population, but that's okay, because we realized that someone heard that the community cared and they wanted to reach out. And we were so pleased with that, having that as an initial experience. And so fast forward, as calls began to come in, we hear that, there was a man who was very clear in knowing that he needed mental health services. And he shared a bit with the volunteer about some of his struggles, some of his stresses. He'd been fighting with the fact whether he should or shouldn't go to therapy for years. I'm sure he was dealing with some level of reaction to the stigma that is real, but ultimately came to that decision and wanted to know a little bit about different types of providers of mental health services, not necessarily specific resources, but okay, I'm ready to start therapy. What do I need to know? And so our listener we call our volunteers listeners. Our listener was able to give him some guidance on the different types of professionals that are mental health professionals, the types of questions that he could ready himself to ask of a provider as he was considering the services that he needed to engage in. We have had, there was one very interesting advocacy related call. It was a gentleman who was part of a tenants association for a senior building, and he was concerned that he had done a lot of local advocacy to ensure that some of the common areas were properly cleaned and sanitized, and he was not getting the results that he wanted. And so he was calling to talk about that stress, as well as seeing if there was some advocacy efforts. That was in Long Island, so we were able to connect him with the Nassau Suffolk Association of Black Social Workers for one of our students to work with him and his the other tenants about some issues to really advocate for the needs of the seniors in that building. So, I could go on with a few others, but, for the most part, we have had people who are the population of essential workers, hospital workers. We had a young adult student, college student, who was the family member of a hospital worker and was able to talk a bit about wanting to go to therapy because this online world of remote learning was really starting to stress her out and she needed some support.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Okay.
Did you all have a question?
Yes, go ahead.
Well, first of all, Dr. Zakia, I want to thank you for being here and introducing the panel, myself, and the listening audience to this. So I'm thinking about when you mentioned Kwanzaa, is there a specific model that the listeners are using to guide people in the conversation to figure out what resources they need? Is there like a ABC or a 1, 2, 3 kind of model? And I'm wondering if that model might be helpful to some of the listening audience, as well to be able to make sure that we're tapping people into culturally competent and appropriate resources.
Sure. And thanks for that. I think that the model, there are 3 core concepts, right? So it is that idea of the collective, the community. How do you present that in terms of the listener being able to share information about how we originally started? We don't get too, don't give too much background. We basically say, thank you for calling. This is who we are, and just we engage that way. But in terms of the 1, 2, 3s, I think listening with empathy is the main issue that we want to make sure that people are conveying empathy through the phone, because there is no video, we're just on the phones, and really being able to practice validation, affirmation, and being able to make certain requests or suggestions for different types of supportive services. The wide range of resources that we have span from concrete needs to health and wellness, mental health services, even non-traditional ways of connecting to things that could affirm people, like podcasts and TED Talks and, sharing different resources and information that's available. So I think the main thing that we recognize is that when people are dealing with particular stressors and, there's a history of not feeling that you're heard, that you're responded to, that people get you, we want to offer the intervention of like-mindedness. So our tagline is, we're here, we're listening. who's the we, really understanding what this collective of the Black Family Summit is and framing out this project, being here, being present with them, undivided attention, turn off all your distractions and be present with the caller. And then being able to understand the techniques of listening, not just active listening, which many people are familiar with, but adding to that listening with empathy and being able to validate and to lean in, even though we're on the phone, but to lean in to what we're hearing being shared.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it reminded me of a call that I'm
Okay, I can
one of the
definitely
volunteers.
appreciate that.
Oh,
Go ahead, Dwayne. Yeah,
Go ahead.
no, I was just adding that I'm one of the volunteers, so the listening line as well. And when you talk about empathy and really being able to lean in and the like-mindedness, that really resonates for me. I only got one call so far, and that call was from a woman who was, up in a senior woman, and she just wanted to talk. She just wanted to talk to someone. She felt isolated, disconnected. Many of the people who she referred to as friend were no longer in her sphere for various reasons, and she just wanted to talk. And it was, she seemed to feel good, and I felt good also to be able to just kind of make space. But I also was able to connect her with informal resources, nothing formal therapy. She wasn't looking for that, didn't really want that, but just some informal ideas and resources where she can continue to connect socially with people who she could identify with. And it just really felt like, wow, I see why this line.
Yeah, thanks for that. And we have received several calls. I've taken a few calls myself. It's important for me to, hear some of the things that are coming in. So I kind of do some backup coverage and have taken some calls. And we have definitely heard that from seniors where they're just looking for some opportunities to connect and to, understand that this is available to them for that purpose, as well as some other resources. We found some resources that's like an elder chat that meets every Sunday in the late afternoon, and I forget which organization sponsors it, but they have it as a conference call because there might be some challenges with people logging into like a Zoom session or something. So they offer that, and we're able to make referrals to that and other, like you said, informal kinds of resources, because people are looking for connection. We have definitely found that people are looking for a connection through this pandemic, and feeling isolated can be very, traumatizing for many people.
That's right.
Let me, if I can ask a question. I wanted to ask, have you noticed a difference from when this shelter in place and pandemic first started with the essential workers? Have you noticed a difference? Has it gotten any better, or has the situation gotten worse? What's your assessment of the mental state of essential workers now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, the shock of it all at the beginning is a different level of stress. Like, what does it mean that, we're in this period of quarantine and shutdown and lockdown and all the different things that we were calling it, but yet they still had to go out. Well, if she gets to stay home, why do I still have to, go out? Because of the nature of their work as essential workers, I think there's a stress there. So that hasn't really gone away, even though we see that some things are starting to open up in some ways. But then in the fall, we started hearing second wave and, all of these realities that were just more problematic. And so I could just imagine the kind of revisiting of the pain and the emotional reactions that many of the essential workers could have gone through. And one thing that I know I reacted to very strongly is in the New York City area, at 7:00, they were clapping for the frontline workers, for the essential workers. There was this, I think they called it Clappy Hour. And there was this recognition, which was really awesome. Even out here in Long Island, the horns were going at 7 p.m. Sirens were going from fire departments, which was a recognition. And we started saying heroes. We were calling them heroes. And I just personally thought of the stress that comes from someone who just went to school or work to be a healthcare worker, a provider of some sort, being now propelled to this idea of a hero. And then they were seeing so much death and so
Right.
much sickness and so much disconnection, but yet you're calling me a hero, but yet I can't help the person in the bed. I mean, I just can only imagine the stress, and even more than stress, the distress that comes from that duality and how complex that was. So I haven't heard anything very specifically from an essential worker through the listening line to speak to that dynamic, but I do have a private practice. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and have had nurses who are my clients, prior to the pandemic. And in continuing with them, they certainly said that idea, they said it on their own, heroes. How am I a hero? And really struggled with what that meant.
Yeah. Yeah. So initially, this acute phase, as you were saying, Dr. Zaki, that acute phase is kind of, we've come out of that. But I feel like too, what I'm seeing, like you're seeing as well, is this kind of, we're in this weathered state now, this weathering, having gone through this, and not just the weathering for the ongoing stress of being under the condition that we're in, but also the secondary sequela of COVID. So the first, initially it was about, I'm afraid of getting sick, but now it's, people are losing their jobs. People can't do job and be home with your children. People are, I was just reading an article today, I think it was Michelle Alexander, was writing an article about people who are waitresses, work in restaurants, and how that has gone down so significantly. And so, so that because of COVID, so that secondary kind of impact, we are really, really feeling that significantly. And so I'm thankful that too, with the listening line, the idea of first responder or essential worker is so broad. And it really allows for any and everybody who just needs to be heard and needs to connect to get what they need.
Absolutely.
I was wondering, I'm sorry, you had a question, Mother Steve?
Yes, I did. I was wondering, that elephant that's always in the room. So you have the pandemic, and then you have racism, or the system of white supremacy. And so I don't know if you can talk to that, and how is that playing a factor also, because we know that many of the essential workers are Black, and so some of them were calling for hazard pay, for some type of extra, insurance, so that when they went into work and they caught this COVID, or they, unfortunately caught the coronavirus, that they would have some type of support.
Yeah, and I think that, it's always difficult when you have one distressing reality on top of another, and you have to try to navigate through all of that to stay as healthy and as whole as you possibly can. It is definitely challenging. So to witness on such a grand scale systemic racism, acts of systemic racism, and, acts of violence, and everything that we have seen just since the pandemic, which we know existed way before. That's a whole other epidemic, right? Really looking at how do you navigate all of that? And one thing that I am pleased to say is that I have seen some organizations recognize that, be concerned about the well-being of their Black staff, particularly. It was a hospital system in New Jersey that came together that heard about the listening line and wanted to connect it to some of their diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, and to present it to their workers. And they have engaged with us pretty consistently to promote the project. I just had a conversation with their chief diversity officer today, because we want to set up a forum with the workers themselves. And it was interesting, because even though corporately the organization said, yes, we want to connect to this idea of the listening line, make it available to our staff even have our EAP program know about it so they can make referrals and just kind of keep it alive, if you will, in the organization. Her concern was that the people who are literally on the front line in certain departments like dietary would be able to know about it. So she wants to make sure that whenever we set up this forum, that they have the necessary equipment. She said, I'll charge some iPads or do whatever I need to do to make sure that they can view it and understand what this intervention is with the listening line so that they could take advantage of it. So I'm just, saying all of that to say that the difficulty of navigating the realities of what we're seeing, first and foremost, if they're Black, they're looking at it and they're interacting. He looked like my cousin. He could have been my my nephew. There's a way of connecting with the realities and I have a young adult nephew who I raised who still lives with us, and sometimes if he don't get in the house at a certain time, I'm not sleeping.
Right.
And I'll hit that text. I'll be like, where you at? You good? And this was even before the pandemic. It's better now because where you going, right? So he's been home. But so that's been good to know. But I know he's like itching to just kind of be a young adult and hang out a little bit. And I'm like, no, don't go there. Just kind of stay in. It's hot right now, right? And you want to be able to kind of just create some moments of peace for yourself. So I know that may resonate with not just mothers, but with family members who are dealing with some of these realities that are very difficult to navigate.
Right. And let's check out this commercial that you all have on YouTube, and then we'll be right back. So let's check this out here.
Work. Do you feel scared, burdened, like you just want to tell someone what you've witnessed, but they just won't understand? If you are a first responder or essential worker, call us, the Community Cares Listening Line, 877-719-1117. A culturally responsive team of trained volunteers are available to help you while you are helping others. You are not alone. We're here. We're listening. Presented by the Institute of Black World Black Family Summit.
All right. Yes.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Need it.
Thank you. We were so intentional with coming up with that 30-second spot. We initially had a video that was about 1 minute and 40 seconds, and it was a project announcement. And there wasn't a voice. It was music. It was, PowerPoint kind of giving information. And it was so interesting. One of the young adults who's on our team, she says, it's nice, but it's long.
Right.
And I was just like, what do you mean? It's under 2 minutes. And she was like, it's still kind of long. And so we knew that as we were moving into the space of wanting to do advertising and TV, that we needed a 30-second spot. And we were very intentional, not just about the time, but the voice and, the images. And so we really want to send the message that even though we won't turn any caller away, but we are targeting persons who are Black, who are identified throughout the African diaspora, and that's our audience, and that's who we want to reach.
Absolutely. Oh, go right
Nicole?
ahead.
No, I didn't have a question, but there is one that I can ask. So you have, how do you become a volunteer? So can you give that information out to people who may actually really want to, sign on to actually help?
Yes, great. Thank you for that. So that is a great question. Initially, we did recruiting through some of our organizations that are affiliated with the Black Family Summit. But if persons want to volunteer, I'll give the email address. It's BFS. So it's like Black Family Summit, BFS listening line at gmail.com. They can email that or they can call 929-356 6201, and they can be in touch with us to express their interest. We do have a process that they have to fill out a form, and we kind of vet their interests and see if they could commit to the training and explain to them what the project is. And we need persons to be over 21, and we need them, if they have some experience or background in human services, social work, psychology, mental health counseling, that's good, but it's not necessary. It's not clinical intervention that we're offering, but we do want to be able to train them. We had someone just recently who's going to be trained in a group coming up this weekend, who is a student, mental health counseling graduate student, and he heard about the listening line through one of the projects of IBW, where they're doing some work around reparations, and they were in a meeting and someone mentioned the listening line, and he reached out to us because he wanted to volunteer. So that's a great question. They can email us bfslisteningline@gmail.com, or they could call 929-356-6201. Yes, thank you. It's listed up on what you have up there. And get more information and work with us to be trained for this project.
Absolutely. And so as we go forward with the listening line, what do you all have anything planned in the future? Any type of seminars or online conferences?
That's a great question. We realized that, okay, it started off as a line, a phone number, but we want to be able to do more. We want to be able to kind of do some psychoeducation around stressors, well-being. We also want to be able to bring attention, like what we're doing tonight. So this is amazing, to be able to share not just about the listening line, but to really speak to the condition of what our essential workers are kind of dealing with. And so we are looking to develop a video series that has very short, because that young adult who's on our team is reminding us of the need to kind of be quick with our messaging, very short, detailed videos that kind of give little wellness tips that recognize a situation. Let's say just, coming home from work, I feel like I don't even want to connect with my family because I just feel so wound up, right? So maybe some tips on how to decompress along the way home, so that when you're with your family, you can be present and receive from them and also give to them without having as much stress. So we want to kind of identify an issue, identify a few strategies, and almost have some online video coaching, type of short video. So we're looking to release that hopefully in the next couple of months, to have a series that we'll have at, through social media. But I do like your question about online, webinars. We've done a lot of connections with organizations who's requested, but really being able to bring attention to the work is something that we're looking to do as we come up on the year of the project, which would be in May sometime, which is good because May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So it would be in alignment with that.
Excellent. And so I wanted to, go ahead, Dr.
Dr. Zakia?
Yes.
Okay, so I know I had a question about listening line people coming from out of state. Does it have to be a New York, New Jersey kind of thing? And I'm saying that because I'm wondering about partnerships with colleges to get young people involved in an internship or a practicum. Of course, they have to be above age 21.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking of some young men that I mentor that are in the field and they're talking about being compromised around finding work. That's soon the field of psychology, human services, but gaining the experience during this kind of non-hiring phase.
That's very interesting.
So some of these guys are in Maryland, in the Maryland area.
So right now we're operating the line in New York and New Jersey, but part of the grant was to really build a model and kind of study a model and then replicate the model in other areas. And so we do want to look at our first year as a pilot, learn from the experience, and then think about what do we need to do to expand to areas where we have chapters of the National Association of Black Social Workers, Association of Black Psychologists, and other member organizations of the Black Family Summit to help them to build out some capacity in their local areas. So we should talk right now, because we're operating locally, it might just be important for them to understand local resources, but because we're doing everything on the phone, and I know when I have to take calls, I get in front of my computer so that I can go to our resource bank as well as look up additional resources. So there is a possibility. I would kind of take that on case by case. If you reach out to me after, we can see that might be very helpful. And, particularly bringing more men to our volunteer space for the listening line could be helpful as well.
Mm-hmm. And so, Sister Nicole,
right.
did you want to?
I love the idea.
Nicole.
About the partnering with the supplier diversity within the other organizations. I think that's a great.
Yeah, you broke up a little bit, but so I didn't hear everything that you just said.
Yeah, I think he has a bad connection, so
Okay.
he's not hearing. Nicole had a question or comment.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, you only cover your local area, but is people able to call from all over? Because I'm on the West Coast. So are you able to take phone calls all over? But, how you, I guess, deal with that type of.
Yeah. So right now we're only taking callers who are in the New York and New Jersey metropolitan area. We don't have the resource information or that capacity built out for other areas, but that's what we're hoping to, do after we pull some things together from this pilot to think about here's this model that we've developed and how it can be replicated in other areas. So for right now, even though it's a toll-free number, it is operating only in New York and New Jersey.
Oh, New York. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And parts of Connecticut, I think, in terms of the tri-state area. Yeah.
I wanted to also ask you about, so since we're in the age of COVID and they've come out with this Operation Warp Speed, the vaccines, are you hearing, from essential workers who are concerned about getting the COVID shot?
Yeah, so just very recently, we took a call. I actually took this call where someone had the information about where they could go for the vaccine, but was just unsettled and needed to talk that out a little bit, knowing the science, feeling comfortable with the science, but also having some hesitation. And so we definitely, just in a very brief encounter with the person, was able to really see the, process of them making a decision and really trying to give them some resources on how to make informed decisions. So we became aware of the Black Coalition Against COVID-19, which is a collaborative of the 4 HBCUs that have medical schools. So it's Meharry, Morehouse, Howard, and Charles Drew University, in collaboration with the National Medical Association, which are the Black doctors, as well as the National Black Nursing Association. So they've come together and have really put together a great public education campaign, and they they authored a love letter to Black America from the nurses and doctors, and they have a video. And so they're doing some things to help people make informed decisions. So we're trying to link, when we hear that from essential workers, we're trying to link them with some credible messengers that represent good information in our communities so that people can make the best decision for themselves.
Absolutely. Thank you.
That is true.
I was curious now, we table mental health discussions. And one of the things that has come up, and we did a whole show around, was stigma. In our community, stigma has historically been an issue in regard to seeking help. And I was wondering, in terms of the listening line, I don't know if you have the numbers, but are we seeing, it is Black men, I think, lag probably a little bit more. I think Black women tend to help seek a little bit more than Black men. I am personally seeing an uptick across the board, but I was wondering if that reflects on the listening line as well. Are we seeing more men than women, more women than men? What is the breakdown?
It's interesting. Yeah, just recently, not long ago, we did an analysis of our call logs. That's what our listeners complete at the end of an engagement with a caller. And so we are definitely seeing more women than men. But when the men have called, we've noticed that they were looking for concrete resources. They weren't doing as much of the, those calls tended to be just slightly shorter. Our average call is maybe like about 25 minutes on average. We have had one that, went a little long, like over an hour. And then some very short ones that were less than 15 minutes. But we are noticing that those calls are a little shorter. I think that's an interesting trend. Very concrete, this is what I believe I need, or looking for very specific resources, talking it out a little bit. Like I mentioned, the gentleman who knew that he was ready for therapy, but wanted a little guidance on how to seek that out. So that's been an interesting observation, just in terms of some gender differences.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess that's interesting, and I guess for any of the professionals who are on here, when it comes down to seeking mental health, is it something to where you see more women seeking mental health than men, or how is that dynamic playing out?
So I have to tell a story that comes from my private practice, which is really one of my career highlights, I think, and certainly of the last 10 years, it's a highlight. So as a private practitioner, I was working with a young male clinician, not too young, but younger than me, male clinician, and he was seeing some clients. I was giving some supervision, and we talked about him doing a therapy group, support group with a few, Black men specifically. They were all clients on my caseload. And he was going to facilitate this group. But then he ran into a personal challenge. His mother had become ill. He had to deal with caregiving, and he wasn't going to do it. So then I went back to my clients. I said, look, I know you talked about this group. However, the person who I had was going to run it is no longer available. And I was considering running it. But I kind of wanted the brothers to just, let them have it. I didn't, I said, let them do it. And then all of them said to me, they said, well, I was actually a little surprised that you said you were going to have somebody else do it. And I was like, oh, okay. And I tell you, that experience, it was a short-term group, about 6 weeks. The bonding and the connection that happened instantaneously blew my mind. These 5 brothers came in, and on day 1, after they heard just a little sharing, they were able to connect. And I think it was like this collective sigh of relief. Okay, some other brothers are here in therapy, dealing with life issues. They had some common threads with, maybe they were invalidated in some areas. So one was a police officer, and he kind of was like the man, real cool dude. Everybody would dap him up wherever he went, kind of thing. But at home, he was having marital challenges. And so he was like, just the stress of going from being the man at work to being a pizza at home, was just very, very disconnecting for him. And it was just such a highlight because I saw how they saw each other, supported each other, certainly validated each other. And, it was a great experience for me as a female clinician to see that happen with a group of brothers in therapy. I said, who said Black men don't go to therapy? You know what I mean? I think that it was just a phenomenal thing. And I have seen a lot of men in my practice, and so while, the listening line, we don't really see more men calling than women, I do think that people are turning the tide a little bit, as dealing with these issues of stigma and going to therapy. But I think they're very specific in terms of who they're looking to work with, and really looking for a Black clinician, or some of them may be looking specifically for a Black male clinician, and some may not matter, but they just want to be able to be seen and to be validated in their healing work.
Right. And that's what we see. That's what we hear just from me being a part of this group, is that there's a need for more Black mental health professionals to talk to on that end. So that's
I don't know, Dr. Swift, if you're seeing this, but some of my, social work colleagues, we have a Facebook group for our Long Island clinicians of color, and we just throw in comments, who has openings, the emails are bursting out. We can't type emails quick enough to just be responsive or return phone calls. And we are all at capacity or close to it. And then you get this bartering, come on, can you take this client for me, please? Can you take this referral? And even as people are calling in, I personally have an outgoing message on my voicemail that says that I'm not taking on new clients because I'm at capacity, and it would cause scheduling conflicts. And people are still leaving messages. Look, I heard what you said, but right?
I want to work with you.
But can you maybe reach out to me? Maybe we could find something that's convenient. And it's a hurting feeling at times when that you have to say no as a therapist. Right. That's a whole nother issue, what Black therapists are dealing with in terms of not being able to be responsive. And we're like trying to figure out who's out there, where you at. We need to know you and send referrals your way. So it's challenging on that end also. But I am pleased to see that there are a lot of directories and initiatives and some websites that are trying to put out information on Black clinicians. There's therapy for Black girls, therapy for Black men. There's a clinician of color web-based directory. So I think as more clinicians learn about this and put their information out there, that people will be able to find who they have an intention to work with. It's real. It's deep. You seeing that, Sister Monique?
Oh yes,
Yeah.
without a doubt. I literally, I so connect with what you were saying. Just today, I always return all my calls, no matter what. I had an outgoing message saying I'm full as well, but I found myself do like this when I call this person. Yes, after letting her go through her spiel. Well, I'm full, and then I had to stop and explain. I feel so badly saying that.
Yeah.
I tell people several times a day,
Yeah.
they want to work with specifically a Black clinician, a lot of times specifically a Black woman, and it's just like, I know you want, and I know it's not out there, and I feel so badly to turn people away, but that's where we are.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let me ask a question, because I think we in our conversations, we offline in talking with the professionals, that since your all's caseloads are so heavy, where do the Black mental health professionals turn to get mental health therapy and counseling? Because I know that not only the essential workers, because they have to deal with seeing death or things like that, but then you all have to hear them recount these terrible situations that they're in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of, peer-based support, which is always good, right? To be able to have your large network, but also your smaller network, your kind of inner circle of peers that you can kind of go to and be affirmed by, as well as seeking out your own therapy. And I think that since we're doing this largely virtual, that opens up opportunities where, someone in New York may be concerned about looking for a therapist in New York because they operate in similar circles. Well, now with virtual, most people doing teletherapy, it's opening up opportunities, I think, for people to seek out those services if they're concerned about proximity and wanting to see someone. Maybe if somebody from Atlanta is licensed in New York, maybe you could see that person. So I think that that we do and we should, be really aware of what's going on with us in this work. Supervision is important, peer support is important, and your own, therapy services or your own healing practices are important as well.
Yeah,
absolutely. And so I guess as we begin to close out in this hour, and you're welcome to join us in the second hour, where we're going to be talking about the fear factor. The fear factor as far as the COVID-19 coronavirus shot, as far as, taxes that are coming up, and so many other situations. How do we handle, and overcome that fear factor, that stress that's on all of us? But before we do that, if you can, once again, give us your the contact information for your organization, for yourself. And as you were saying, if you can give out how people can help join in their particular states and make this a national hotline.
Great. Oh, I love that. Okay. So this is the card. I don't know if you could see it that we have. So the phone number is here. Can you get it? Hold on. Okay. Yes. That's a little better. So that's our phone number for the listening line, 877-719-1117. And that'll connect you on Monday, 7 days a week from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. is when we operate the listening line. And we also have an administrative phone number if you have questions about wanting to learn more about the project or volunteer or possibly recruit other volunteers. Then you can call 929 356-6201. Our website is scrolling on the bottom, so all of that contact information is also on the website. And our email is BFS is in Black Family Summit, BFS listening line @gmail.com. But if you go to ibw21.org and then look and you see the listening line, if you scroll down, I think it's the second image, and you'll be able to see the full page for the Community Cares listening line. There you go. And we're also
All
on
right.
Facebook at Community Cares listening line. And Twitter and Instagram are coming soon. I just recently heard from some people on our social media team. So we're building out that capacity also.
Nice.
But right now it's Facebook. We'll put all our social media handles up on the website once they're finalized.
All right. And so let's see here. I'll take this on off. And so we want to thank you. Is there any other questions that you all have before we close out this this portion of the program?
You actually asked all the questions that I had, Brother Stephen. You were very thorough. You literally ran down my list.
That's awesome.
But I just want to say, you know, as someone who's involved with the line and really felt you come in and really take this project and really make it what it is, and the future of it really looks bright. And I just want to personally thank you. And because you really are doing, I know it's a big demand in addition to all the other things that you do. I am truly appreciative for what you're doing and leading the helm with this initiative, and then and just being who you are. So blessings and thank you so much. And thank you for being here and sharing with all of us today.
You're more than welcome. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. This is an awesome space to share with you. I love the name, the Knowledge Cypher. That just connects you right away to, right? I love it.
That's right.
And what you're trying to do. So I'll definitely share it out on as many platforms as I possibly can. So continued blessings in the work that's being done. We're excited about this work. We know that it's important. We're excited about building it out and getting what we need to put that infrastructure in other places. And also reframing it a little bit, right? In terms of not just the population of essential workers, but really being able to encourage people to recognize when they need to unburden and have some emotional support and possibly connect to resources that'll help them in their healing and their journey toward wholeness.
And please give our love to Baba Leonard.
I will. I spoke to him today. I most certainly will do that when I connect with him on Monday. I think we have a standing meeting, so I will certainly do that.
And let him know. Go right ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to offer if there are any announcements or anything that are coming down the pike that you want to share with the listening audience so they can be a part of, please feel free to do so.
Okay, we'll certainly do that. We'll certainly do that. Yeah. Good.
And one last request that if you want to collaborate with us, you know, in streaming any type of events, we would more than love to be a part of what your organization is doing.
Oh, that's a bet. We can definitely do that. I will definitely, we can make something happen. That's exciting to know.
Yes.
And we can pull something together. I'm excited about that. This is awesome.
All right. Okay. Yes, it is. Thank you, sister, for the energy that you have brought and just the spirit. And thank you, as Dr. Monique said, for the service of helping out our Black essential workers who you know and I know are the majority who are on the front line and who are just trying to take care of their family.
That's it. Okay. You're welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sister. Take care.
Take good care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right. And we want to thank all of you for watching. And we're going to switch over to the second part where we're just going to do a roundtable discussion. And you can join in that conversation. That number I'm going to put on the bottom if you want to call in and be a part of this conversation where we're just going to free for all and talk about the fear factor. When it comes to the COVID-19 coronavirus, when it comes to the warp speed vaccination shot, when it comes down to the taxes that we are now having to, pay this, some of us pay this stimulus, this piddly stimulus check back. And so let's just mix it up and get right into the conversation. So I'll put it that way. And
So,
yes, sir. Go ahead, Dr. Dwayne.
yeah, so I have a comment. Dr. Zakia definitely brought me up to speed with a few things that might carry over into the second half. For one, when she was highlighting the Black Coalition against COVID-19, I immediately went out there to kind of take a look at it. And I love the way, I believe it's a partnership between about 4 or 5 different HBCUs. And it sounds like the conversation so far is framed around giving people information, access, resources, so they can make informed decisions. So it's not like vaccines yes, vaccines good, vaccines bad. It's like, here's the information, make more informed choices about what direction you want to go in. And at least we can say, here are the studies that the scholars seem to be breaking down for the community.
Right.
And honestly, this is what I've been looking for in my own circles, is like, where do you go for the quality information? And you feel like you can make more informed choices about it, because there are people out there with all the degrees doing this work and looking at the research and explaining it to people in the community. So I love the way it's positively framed, and the scholars are looking at this and breaking it down for the community. That's already a great takeaway for me.
I agree with you, Dr. McClure, because I think that, the approach, of course, being in the Nation of Islam, our approach is don't take the vaccine. However, I think that, like you're saying, people need information to make that decision for themselves, right? So I agree with you on that, definitely. And so I don't know. It's just a good thing to have that information and to really try to get some type of understanding. And one of the things that I think is kind of is, so for instance, John, I forget, one of the Kennedys, right? I forget which one. He was recently banned off of Facebook, and he was banned off of Instagram. So what? Robert Kennedy, thank you. And see, Robert Kennedy was putting out information, but some of the information, of course, that he was putting out is information about the potential dangers of taking any type of vaccine. And so they shut his social media site down. So that is where I think the danger comes in, is when you try to silence voices who may not be for the vaccine. And some of them are like Dr. Marcola. He and others have alternative methods, but yet their alternative methods are being shut down on social media. And that's where I think there is more that causes more hesitation from people who are considering either getting or not getting that vaccine.
Yeah. So thank you, Stephen. I was wanted to kind of make that point also. I'm all for information, but I think all information needs to be available for people. This is not an arena that I'm an expert in, but I certainly do a fair amount of reading and so forth. But what I am seeing is that the information that is available is becoming carefully crafted, packaged, and given, and that everything outside of that is being blocked. And we're not just seeing this on social media. I have long, for many years, been connected to a lot of networks like Dr. Mercola and many others who are more on the side of alternative remedies. And this is in the arena of cancer and other medical procedures. So it's not just dealing with vaccines. And so, of course, they've chimed in on the vaccine piece. But the emails that I used to get about COVID, even in the email sector, they cannot put the word COVID, they cannot put the word vaccine, otherwise those emails are getting bounced out. So they have to code it when they send the email. So it's at that level is the point. It is at that level that there's an attack on free speech in terms of the sharing of knowledge and information, if it is in opposition or outside of what mainstream propaganda wants to say.
And what comes to mind with me, and I love all of this talk, but we have to, this is not surprising. You know what I'm saying? What gets me is when I see our people, because I looked at some of those links that you were showing and how our Black people are all trying to get the information to, you know, like even today you have out here in Las Vegas, you have what is called 100, I think 100 Black Man School. They're putting together some type of conference for our Black people to get the information they need about the COVID. My thing is that, you know, we can't be too surprised about America. It's not surprising that they deny us knowledge. How many of us knew about the Hidden Figures when it came out? Before it came out? How many of us, you know, we thought white man got himself into space? How many of us knew anything when it comes to the betterment of Black people, you know, to better ourselves? How many of us knew any of these things? It was hidden from us. Had we known it, what would have happened? What would have been the difference? So this is not a surprise that they want to keep knowledge from us for their own benefit. It is their benefit for us to take the shots. So they're not going to give us everything that we ask for in a perfect little pretty package. We just don't want to see the wolf in the room. We want to continue to think that everybody got on sheep clothing. Everybody is a part of Jesus, his flock. We want to continue to think that. And that's our problem. It has nothing to do with the information they're giving to us. Why would we even trust the people that's never shown us to be trustworthy in the entire existence of us? It's beyond us. So it's the fear factor that's going on, because we really shouldn't just be trusting them at all. We have a hard problem trusting our own Black skin. We know inside ourselves we shouldn't be taking that virus. So why are you taking it? Why are you even considering that? When this virus has such a short time of existence to actually even be in a laboratory, and you have scientists talking about it took decades after decades just to come up with a vaccine, yet they just snap one up in less than a year. No. And then they want to give it to us. And then they tell us, well, now they're saying you're going to end up having to take a third shot because there's this mutation. Well, the virus mutates. So you're never going to catch a hold of it, but no one wants to speak about the elephant in the room, because the elephant in the room leads us always back to who? The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and what he has given us about this virus. And no one wants to touch that elephant in the room.
Right. And I think you make up a good point. One of the things I think is that there's been just such a long history of Black people and our relationship with the medical profession, and that relationship has not been one where they were looking out for our best interests, right? So this book, I don't know if you all can see it, Medical Apartheid. You know, when we talk about the hesitation that Black people have, it's not an unfounded, it's not an unfounded fear, if you will, or hesitancy of getting this vaccine. Now, you talked about Hidden Figures and how that had been covered up. But when we talk about the Tuskegee experiment, the Tuskegee experiment is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes down to the relationship of Black people and the medical profession. We know that Black women, and credit should be given to the Black woman who, I forget the doctor that experimented on Black women and came up with a lot of what is used today in gynecology. We know that prisoners, Black prisoners, were experimented on, and so many of the lotions and things like that we have in our homes today, they went through those trials, and of course, none of this was consensual. And so now today, they're even talking about vaccinating children from ages 6 to, I forget the age in which the trials end. But this is something that is, like you said, this is a vaccine that hasn't been thoroughly tested as others have in the past. And I'll just say this, and I'll end with this. And we also have to look at the follow the dollar, right? We also have to look at the fact that when I was getting vaccinated, you only had so many shots today, these children are getting so many vaccinations, and some of them, particularly the MMR, the measles, mumps, and rubella shot, they're saying is linked to autism, but yet they're saying that there's no link, but yet they won't tell us, and they don't know themselves what is the cause. So there you go. It's just that as you say, that historical context. Yes, sir, Dr. McClure.
So as I was going back, and I'm glad you brought up Harriet Washington's medical apartheid. I was listening to some of her speeches this week, and she was saying that prior to her work, really nobody was writing on these topics, and nobody was writing about this kind of history. And so she, she knocked a hole in the dam with this book. And I know or many people are familiar with Gigi. And one of the things she brought up in one of her presentations was the whole process of consent. And so people didn't even know that they were participating in certain research. They didn't know that you could opt in or opt out of research. And so one of the things that I would encourage the listening audience to look at is something called CITI, which is the Collaborative Institutional Training Initiative. And so because a lot of these mistakes, errors, and even if they weren't mistakes and errors, these problems happen primarily in the Black community, Black and brown communities. There are entire new standards that have been put into place, whistleblower protections that are being put into place. And even with Dr. Zakia, when she just mentioned the Black Coalition Against COVID, if anything, this should warrant an entire new era of scholars, African-American scholars getting together, and even internationally to start having maybe our own CDC of sorts, where we're looking at the research, we're looking at, and money is being pumped into this to make sure that something is independent, so people can feel a bit more assured with what steps that they need to make with whatever the medicine is, whatever the vaccines are, and even the issues around MMR and autism and some of those studies. So I'm glad that the internet is actually pulling the Band-Aid off and allowing the people to have the conversations that were once never had. And I don't think generally our folks were having these conversations years ago. As a matter of fact, I can't say we were having these conversations prior to COVID. Lay people having these conversations. These conversations are being held in barbershops. I hear on little Zoom hangout calls, that men and women jump into, Facebook posts. So I think a lot more people are waking up and participating in this. And I love, once again, Dr. Zakia bringing that up, the Black Coalition Against COVID-19.
Yes.
I want to hear what the scholars, and they have organizations, they have the Panhellenic Council in there, religious groups. So I see them including more people in, so Black and brown cannot be in the era of misinformation or even not being included in the informed consent. We need to know what's in these medications or in these vaccines, and people that have done the research themselves, and get some money behind this. I'd like to see if something like this would be maintained for the future, this Black Coalition Against COVID-19. Perhaps this is the beginning of something new.
Yes, sir. And you make up a good point. If you all will allow me, I would love to play this short clip. I think it's about 2 minutes, right? Of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And he's basically saying what you're saying, Dr. McClure, is that we need to have our own doctors and scientists who can tell us, if this vaccine is something that we should be take or should not take, and also come up with our own vaccines, and not put our hands in the hands of these scientists of death and profit. So let's take a look at this clip, and then we'll talk some more about that.
I say to my brothers and sisters in Africa, if they come up with a vaccine, be careful. Don't let them vaccinate you with their history of treachery through vaccines, through medication. Are you listening? I say to the African presidents, do not take their medications. I say to those of us in America, we need to call a meeting of our skilled virologists, epidemiologists, students of biology and chemistry. And we need to look at not only what they give us, we need to give ourselves something better.
Right.
So my teacher told me, don't speak for some, speak for the whole. And now I'm speaking for Black America, for Hispanic America, for the Native American, and for those who are desirous of life. They're making money now, plotting to give 7,500,000,000 people a vaccination. Dr. Fauci, Bill Gates and Melinda, you want to depopulate the earth. What the hell gives you that right? Who are you to sit down with your billions and talk about who can live and who should die? That's why your world is coming to an end quickly, because you have sentenced billions to death, but God is now sentencing you to the death that you are sentencing to others.
All right. So, I mean, that right there that's the reality of where we're at. Because one of the things that the minister, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, is stating is that the mind, looking into the mind of these global elite, right? And they're seeing the masses of people who are what they would call useless fevers now because of artificial intelligence, robotics, and algorithms. Many of the jobs that require labor are no longer needed. So now what do you do with the masses of the people? And it's hard for any civil, sane human being to think in their mind that people would plot to kill billions of people. However, I think we've seen the history in Nazi Germany. I think we've seen the history of the Trail of Tears. I think we've seen the history of our own enslavement, that there are people who think like this. And so
and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad stated that you can't even fathom the mindset of Satan. So, you know, to say that people can go that dark in their thoughts to want to just kill a whole lot of people like that, I mean, it's in their nature to want to do that. And we've seen the history of that. But for us, which is my concern, is more so looking at us, because no one can actually do anything to us until we give them control. And obviously we're giving them control. We took and put our own lives, our own health in their hands, and now we have the weathering effect. So we're just all becoming sick now. There was a plot of all of this that we just don't want to speak on. Because if you check history, there was no people in slavery dying from heart attacks, dying from strokes. There is at least not mention of that, nor were they dying from, and they were going through such harsh times. more harsh times than us, that you would actually think that what they were going through, they would have experienced a stroke or a heart attack. But they didn't experience those type of things. They were more, afraid of dying by lynching than they was dying by, our health at that point was dwindling down, but it wasn't to the point where it is now. We so trust them with the shots that they gave us, with the medicine that they gave us, with the food that they feed us. We so much trust it that now we having all this chemical effect right now. So what we're seeing is chemical effects. And that's why COVID-19 is able to get to us, because our immune system, you got 5 sicknesses, actually 6, that our people is at high risk of. High blood pressure and hypertension. What is it? Diabetes. Then it's asthma. Then it's, what else? Heart disease, heart attack, stroke. Those are the 5 conditions that COVID-19, if you get COVID-19, you sure to die. You're lucky to beat it, but you're sure to die because you got those conditions, those preconditions. So those are all those type of conditions of health that Black people have. We lead in them. You didn't have us dying of cancer. Slaves wasn't dying of cancer back then. So we're dying of cancer now. How did these things get in our bodies? How did all these different type of chemical things get inside of our bodies? Because we cold-heartedly trust our enemies. But it didn't come without a cost, because, engrams, when you talk about Odyssey, dying, you have demon circuits, which is like Stockholm syndrome. It actually make you relatable, make you in love with your oppressors, where you're actually believing everything that the oppressors say, and you're living accordingly to the way the oppressors, to go along, get along relationship. You're living accordingly to the way they're living. So
as you can see, our sister Nicole is cut and dry with it, right? she don't mince words, but however, I do a program, and I'll throw it out here, right? I have my program Black Narrative, and I stream it on National Network View. And I just recently interviewed Dr. Patrice Muhammad. I've interviewed Dr. Akili Muhammad. I've interviewed Dr. Wesley Muhammad, and I've interviewed a chef, and I can't right now think of my sister's name, and I apologize for that. However, one of the things that they've all mentioned was the connection between the gut and brain, the gut bacteria and the brain, right? And so I mentioned in the interview yesterday about the Pottinger Cat Experiment, and I would urge you all to check that experiment out. And that experiment basically said that once Pottinger, he fed these cats a raw diet, and then he fed another set of cats a processed food diet. And by the 3rd generation, the cats, they were lethargic. Their coats weren't shiny. The female cats were either dying in birth or not giving birth at all. And the children were born with disease. This is the 3rd generation. And as Sister Nicole was saying, really, when you look at the condition of the Black man and woman, and you talk about that weathering effect, when we are in that 3rd generation now, when we look at the rate of infant mortality, when we look at the rate of Black women dying, maternal mortality, this is a canary, as I've always said, this is a canary in the coal mine, because this is not natural. As you were saying, Sister Nicole, this is not natural, because naturally we should be born healthy. Naturally, Black women have given birth to 15 children, some forcibly, but some, of course, just had large families, right? And so you're right about that.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
So you make an interesting point. It brings me back to I was looking at a documentary. They were talking about viruses and so forth, and these were people who are not really kind of propagating the package message. These people are scientists at the top of their game, and And one of the things that they were saying was similar to what you were saying, Brother Stephen, as it relates to how we've kind of created a culture that wants to, that is seeking to kind of sterilize. And, you know, if it's a germ, it's bad. And so we have to kill it. And so they were basically acknowledging how, you know, there are billions of germs, bacteria around us that we need to have interaction with. And that's why people are talking now about the masks and social distancing and staying inside. It's really reducing our immune system. But they were talking about the biome, and they were also talking, I had not heard of before, the virome, and how there are viruses out there that basically it helps to kind of, you know, you get a software update. This is what our interactions with these viruses do. They update our immune system so that we can continue to adapt and overcome whatever is out there. But this is something that we need to do. So we kind of create this barrier that, you know, and kill off all germs, bacteria. That's really harmful to the human species. It doesn't help the human species. And so I think that that just coincides with the mentality that we have now about just kind of just, you know, sterilizing everything being looking good, but not really recognizing the intricacies and the sophistication of the ecosystem that was created by God, right? And so, and how intertwined and interconnected and interdependent that it really and truly is on every level, not just a social level, okay, and but also on this, you know, a cellular level as well. So I think that's, you know, it's something that we have to begin to kind of think about and look at, and stop being so afraid. I was listening to another scientist who was talking about, which makes perfect sense. We went through it, Spanish plague. We went through, you know, the bubonic plague. We went through pandemics in the past, and we've never had a vaccine to get out of it. But what happens, they were saying, is that when a virus comes into contact with human beings, okay, we saw a lot of deaths according to the statistics in the first wave. And I'm not denying that, but what they were saying is as it goes into the human system, our immune systems adapt and get stronger. And I think we are seeing that, although there's still a lot of fear talk out there. I think we are seeing a lot of people contracting the virus, but also a lot of people more surviving than did the first wave. And so I'm saying all this basically to just kind of say we have to, we have to become more knowledgeable, because we opened this conversation talking about the fear factor. If we are governed through fear and by fear in many ways, and from a psychological perspective, bringing it back to what I do, with the psychology of it, this whole operating under condition of fear is not to our best interest. It's not beneficial. And we don't have to do that, because there is knowledge, there is information. And with that information, we can make informed decisions instead of just reacting out of fear and kind of following the carrot.
Yeah.
No, I want to say that I absolutely agree with you, Dr. Swift, because there you go. That is what dispels fear, right? Knowledge. Knowledge dispels fear. And as you're saying, you know, this is the fear and the hesitancy that many would have with this vaccine, is that, and I think Dr. McClure had said something, hopefully, I mean, not calling you out or anything, but you might share with us as far as, you know, this vaccine being brought into being, and we're told that it's not the same process that other vaccines are brought in. It's something new. Now, this is where, Dr. Swift, I think that you make a very good point. And that is that these viruses, the body is designed to overcome these viruses and to, like you said, update and to make us stronger. So now they're giving you a shot, and this shot is something that you don't really know how it's going to affect you in the long run. And it may not affect you, but it may affect your children, because now you have this foreign agent that is doing who knows God what to so-called protect you against this coronavirus. So that is what the hesitation is. And when it comes down to understanding the process of which that they went through to create this this vaccine, no one has ever gone on television and told us what this process was, nor how this vaccine actually protects you. So there you go. And then they'll shut down and censor those who will have the desire to try to tell you. Yes, sir, Dr. McClure.
Yeah, I think just to Dr. Monique's point, we can react or we can respond. And I think in times past, we were always forced into the reaction mode, which could just be based on fear, but we're allowed to, with more information, able to respond accordingly. So it kind of begs the question, not even in this forum, the purpose of this forum is to get more information out there and move people out of fear and move them into responding more than reacting. So I even think about this forum in terms of looking at naturopaths, if I'm using that term properly.
Yes.
Because I know this isn't my body of knowledge. But I'm wondering about an entire session on nutrition and wellness and naturopaths and people that are invested in the prevention side. As we know, this COVID-19 seems to be taking people out that have the most compromised systems. And that's going to show up because of weight and hypertension and cancer and all the other variables that we know. What can we do to keep ourselves in a mode of prevention to whatever the world has? All the toxicity of the world has less of an impact on us. So it sounds like as we move into this next century, wellness has to be the order of the day because we simply don't know the toxins in everything. I have a candle lit right next to me. I don't know exactly what all is emanating and what the wax is made of. What am I breathing in that I have no awareness of right now? And I don't mean that's just like a side note, but I really don't know what I'm thinking on. The level of toxicity in water and all those pieces. So I'd love to see an entire session focus on prevention or the preventive side of the house, as opposed to the medical model or the prevention model. Eat to live. How about that?
That's excellent.
Exactly. And you spoke the true words, how to eat to live. That's the exact book that everybody needs, because health food needs to be one of our main focus going over. We need to be re-educated. We need to really re-educate, starting from the womb of us to our children in the classroom, because we were never taught how to eat to live. So look at our communities. We have all kinds of bad restaurants. I don't even shop in my community. I drive all the way across town to other communities to basically shop because the better food is there. You go into stores in our community, they look like prison cells. They look, in the Black community, they look like prison cells. They look they're not taken care of good. The food is not good there. We know that it's bad food coming in. Look at the restaurants that houses in our community as opposed to the restaurants that houses in other communities. They got nothing but fast food, all in the Black community. They have nothing but fast food. They don't have healthy food in our community or nice restaurants in our community for our people to go and eat. But in all sense, you don't have the now today mother don't cook food. You actually have women that is grown now in their 20s and don't even know how to cook. They can't even go in there and cook a good meal or even know the value of cooking a good meal. And as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad stated, as far as the MGTs go, you can either be a murderer in the kitchen or you can be a doctor of good health in the kitchen when you're cooking for your family. So we actually have to re-educate ourselves. Our entire community needs re-education, and that's real. We need to be re-educated and given right knowledge, because knowledge is the torchlight of a civilization. The problem is we have not been living our own civilization, and it's time for us as a people It's not, you know, when people think of separating, they think, oh my God, I got to leave this where I got to leave from. No, separation of your mind and start doing what is best for your people. It's okay to want to do best for our people and to want to give our people the right knowledge. I'm for them knowing exactly what's going on when it comes to the COVID-19 vaccine and getting that knowledge. But who knowledge are we giving to them? We've yet had our research go in and research. We're giving knowledge of them. If we're giving knowledge of them, then we're still not giving them the right knowledge. We have to get our own doctors and research to go in, research, and then come to us and tell us that this is what's going on. Because as far as I've read, the COVID-19 vaccine, isn't it supposed to go into every single cell? Like it goes into you have your mRNA and then your DNA, and it goes into it's like a replica of the mRNA. And, you know, from what is stated about that vaccine, it goes into every single cell of your body. So it's actually making changes to cells in your body. I mean, that's not normal. That's not normal to make changes to your cells, because this is what I read in the last article, that they were talking about it's a replica of your mRNA, like some type of graphing of the mRNA that they're putting in, because the virus itself is connecting to the mRNA or something like that, and that's the reason why it's mutating real fast when it's in your RNA and not your DNA, something like that. I was reading on it, trying to get as much information about this as possible, because we need to know about it. But as far as taking it, I'm a firm believer. You know, I stand with Farrakhan. I can't say I'm going to take something that I don't even trust them. That's just my personal preference.
So I agree with you and Dr. McClure, absolutely 100%. And that is, you're absolutely right. I think, Dr. McClure, you really, touched on something, and that is preventative care. And that's, once again, that's another thing that we see almost no news stories about how to. And like you said, Sister Nicole, how to eat to live, the science of eating. And you know what? Like I said, I did an interview with Dr. Patrice Muhammad, and Dr. McClure, you're absolutely right. There's what is it called? Holistic health, right? There is what the Queen does. What is that? Something therapy. I can't think of the word right now, but these natural ways of maintaining the body and supporting the immune system, because as we see that many people who catch the virus, because they have a strong immune system, are able to overcome, and they don't need to get that vaccination shot. Now, I'll end with this. For myself, I've never, taken, since I was young, I've never taken the flu shot every year. Never taken the flu shot every year. I haven't gotten the vaccine shot. And, I don't see me getting the vaccine shot or the flu shot, because I tried to maintain myself by eating properly, getting proper rest, drinking water, and exercising, getting sunlight. There's so many different things, but of course, those things are not being shared with the public. And as a matter of fact, they're being suppressed. So I think, that's one of the reasons why there's a lot of mental health stress that is taking place in the Black community.
Well, one of the things you just mentioned, sunlight. And we know the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan spoke about sunlight and the billions of nutrients that is in the sunlight that we need. But, we may not be getting, the information that is outside of what, the propaganda, but even through reading what is being put out. If you read and you read critically, you can extract some degree of understanding. I've seen multiple articles that are talking about those people who have, lost their battle with COVID. They one of the things that they're seeing, that they have high rates of low vitamin D. Again, most people who die from COVID have low vitamin D.
Yeah.
High rates of low, I was going to say. So we're seeing that there's low rates of, so that's one thing. And I'm not MD and I'm not prescribing anything, but what it does help me to understand is like, that gives me a lead. And now I go and I investigate and read. And months ago, early in COVID, I heard it was an Indian doctor was doing a talk, and it was so compelling about vitamin D. And this was before anybody else was talking about vitamin D. And he broke it down, and I was convinced, like, that makes perfect sense because yeah, there you go, Dwayne.
I have mine too.
You can't read one article and say, okay, I know what to do now. You have to corroborate information. And that's how you'll be able to discern and understand what is valid, what is true, what it feels right to me. If people do that research and feel like, you know what, I need to take this vaccine, it's good, okay, so be it. But also, again, you just can't go with fear, and you just can't go with the mainstream narrative. You do have to do your own homework. You do have to kind of read between the lines. And I think that's really, really important today.
And to back up what you're saying, Dr. Swift, sometimes we're herded, right? Like sheep. So for instance, they are talking about this new strain, right? That's now impacting young people. No coincidence that they're now doing a vaccine shot for, as I mentioned, young people as young as 6 years old. And so sometimes we will see something in the news and we won't relate it to something that they bring out later that they primed you for. They've conditioned you like Pavlov's dog, right, to go in a certain direction. And I think that what you were saying, Sister Nicole, too, is that one of the things that we need to really look at is alternative, and you said too, Dr. Swift, and you, Dr. McClure, is alternative news sources. Now we really have to begin to think outside of the box and not so much listening to what the mainstream talking heads, who you have to understand that many of these mainstream news outlets are funded by these big pharmaceutical corporations that control the narrative. So the Final Call newspaper, for me, I turn on and watch Press TV out of Iran to get what's going on here in America. Because if you watch American mainstream news, they're talking about these crazy so-called reality TV shows that are not reality. Or they're showing some dog pushing a cart down the street. This is a news story. So I watch, Press TV, RT, so many other different alternative news sources.
Yeah.
Yeah. Educating, we have to be.
I'll highlight within.
Oh, go ahead.
Within psychology, we have the DSM, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, which is basically the medical model side of the house, which drives diagnosis, treatment, and primarily insurance. But then there's the other side of the house of sorts, where it's just focused on wellness and prevention and care. One thing COVID-19 has caused me to really reflect on is getting on the wellness side of the conversation. I appreciate the medical model, study those, went to school for, and also understand the wellness extension models. My doctors told me in the past about getting cholesterol under control. Well, I can either take the medical model and start taking a whole bunch of medications, or I can simply change my diet and get on the wellness side of the conversation. I am more so moving to the wellness side of the conversation. Read the research out here on the medical side, because I'm looking at the wellness side. The wellness side is up to me. With every decision that I make, what restaurants I stop at, how much water I'm taking on, the vitamin D that we were talking about, and all the health things. So once again, I'm not giving any advice, because that's not the position I hold. But that's something personally I'm doing for myself, is trying to set up shop a bit more on the wellness side, which means personal responsibility.
I think, and as we close this out, I think that what you said, Dr. McClure, is basically where it's at. And people might watch this and may ask the question, how is this conversation related to mental health? It is related to mental health because, as Sister Nicole is saying, is that you're taking your life into your own hands. You're not putting your life in the hands of people who don't have your best interests at heart. And one of the things that we're talking about now is how do you go about doing that? Well, I think one of the things that we have to begin to understand, and as Sister Nicole put so bluntly, right, is that we have to, as the old saying, reject what the enemy supports and support what the enemy rejects. So, in other words, if we're looking at the society going in a certain direction and it's all going downhill, obviously, these so-called intellectuals don't know what they're talking about. So maybe we should look into alternative, those who they have rejected and alienated and pushed to the side, and not listen to these so-called talking heads that we see on television every day. So let me go and we'll give some closing comments from each of you as we close out. And we'll start with you, Sister Nicole, and then we'll start with our birth date sister, Dr. Swift. And then and once again, we wish you a happy birthday, Dr. Swift. And we're so thankful that Allah has allowed you to grace us on this planet.
I hope you had a good celebration for your birthday. Yeah.
A couple of days of it. Yes, I did.
Excellent.
So I just want to say, and I always will lead with this because I want it to be a lasting effect in the mindset of us, that we need to come into unity. That is just the biggest thing. We're individuals. We tend to fight the same problem individual ways. And we need to bring all of that. All of us be fighting the same problem, and we all have like this way of actually wanting to fight it and beat it. But we just won't come into unity so that we can all have that one punch to knock out whatever we need to knock out as a people. So we have to come into unity to fight whatever is coming our way. That's the only way. And, I stand 100% with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad when he said that unity would solve 99% of our problems.
Yes.
Absolutely beautiful.
Yes, I mean, you can't. What else could you say, right? I think that is so true. Definitely something that I've said before, and we have to begin to, I think, tap into our own divine, God-given internal resources to help us. And I'm saying that not pointing to a vaccine. I'm talking about vaccine and across the board for our own mental health, for our own wellness, as Dwayne talked about, for our own social standing, for our survival. We have to tap in where it's been too long that we have been following suit and going by the tempo of another player. And we're not playing for our own selves. We're not gelling with our own tempo. And so I do think it's past time that we need to kind of pull in and go in and then allow that spirit to lead.
Absolutely. Sir, Dr. McClure.
When I think about the word education, I think about the Latin structure to it of educe. So true education is what brought out of us or is developed within us, which means you have to take some personal responsibility in this. It's almost the difference between training and education. Training is going to give you the ropes of something, the 1, 2, 3s of it. education is telling you the nuances in between. We have to take more responsibility for where we are in this day and time. We have boatloads of information to make better decisions with. And so in that too fast eat loose, this forum is giving mix and wrestle with different thoughts and ideas and hopefully find some blend between medicine and wellness and make more informed choices about their lives. So thank you for the forum.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And so let me close this on out here. And so I want to just thank everyone for tuning in to Knowledge Cypher and to ask you to be a part of this conversation. You can go to our Facebook page, Knowledge Cypher conference series. Just type in Knowledge Cypher. Cypher is CYPHER. Type in Knowledge Cypher and follow us on Facebook. Be a part of our Facebook group. Also go to our pinch. What is it called? Our Patreon. Thank you. Our Patreon site. That's patreon.com/Know for Life. And really, you can just type in Know for Life. That's KNOW, the number 4 LIFE, and you can find us through a Google search. We would also love for you to share this program, to drop a comment section and subscribe to our YouTube channel, as we have many other things coming up. And once again, if you join that Patreon site or that Facebook site, you will have the ability to become a part of the program in the future. You will actually come on with us and be a part of the program. So with that, I want to thank the panel once again for a very timely and insightful conversation, because Black mental health matters, right? And so with that, I want to say to all of you, thank you once again, and may God continue to bless you and your family with the light of truth and understanding. God bless.
Okay, let me turn on my light.